Okay, well, we're live now. Welcome, one and all, to In Tune with Kia Joon. I'm your host, Kia Joon. Today, I have three guests on. The first time we've had three guests on. And we're going to be talking about whether COVID-19.
Live now. Welcome.
Hold on. Monica, you need to mute your output. Sorry. It's all good. No worries. We have a couple of technical mishaps. It's normal. It happens. Without further ado, we're going to be talking about whether we think COVID-19 will create a new generation of boomers. And here, before we start off anything, before I introduce anyone, I want to quickly define boomer as a derogatory term derived from baby boomers, describing politically conservative behavior and old school mentality when compared to younger generations. We'll be saying Zoomer a lot. That's in reference to Gen Z, people who are born after 2000, roughly speaking. Now, my special guests today, I have Baptiste. Please introduce yourself.
Hello, everybody. No, I'm not that French. My name is Baptiste. He is from what is it, middle school and high school? Jesus, long time buddies.
Fantastic. Thank you for being on, Baptiste. And we have Daria. Daria, please introduce yourself.
Same story as Baptiste. I've known Kia since elementary.
Fantastic.
And yeah, good to be on again.
Yeah, it's great to have you. Always good conversations with you, Daria, and the lovely and illustrious Monica.
Hi, so I'm Monica. I've known Kia for the last 3 years, and I'm his girlfriend.
And we're celebrating our third year together on May 3rd, coming up very soon.
Cute.
Wow.
Yep.
Congratulations.
I'm going to do unspeakable things to her. Anyway, so we're going to kick off this podcast right where we started it from the last stream. And we started it from Monica posing a very intriguing question. Monica, what did you ask us?
So, yeah, I mean, we were talking about a lot of the differences between Zoomers and Boomers, and you were mentioning how, I don't know if it was you or Daria, but one of you guys mentioned that these generations went through sort of a crisis. And, I have a question where, is this coronavirus? I think it's arguably a really big crisis. We're going into a recession and a pandemic. I'm starting to wonder, is it going to create a new generation of boomers from either, millennials becoming more conservative or Zoomers starting to understand, the boomers' point of view. So I kind of wanted to explore that a little bit.
And Daria was the most intrigued by this question, so I want to let him weigh in first.
You caught me unprepared there. Just open up any avenue of conversation.
The world is your oyster. You heard this question. You were so interested. I was so interested. What is the first thing that comes to mind? What do you want to answer?
Well, I wanted to kind of jump on my desk and shout yes. So I'll say that from the get-go. I really do think that, well, just to point out that perhaps you could argue this too, that I think we already touched upon that I thought millennials were already becoming boomers. Or that, some of, maybe I would argue half of them were already starting to become boomers. And so the COVID is kind of freaky because it might turn the majority, right? It might be the tipping point where it turns the majority of millennials into boomers. Because I guess in time, you need a time of quote unquote crises, pandemic, or you need those kind of times to jolt people into conservatism or to go to the boomer route.
Okay, let me actually answer this question with another side question. What impact did 9/11, an arguably generation-changing event, have on millennials and Gen X, and maybe even on boomers? So what do you guys think were the biggest societal changes, or perhaps political changes that came from 9/11? Crickets. Okay, so maybe I'll give a try. I'll give a try at answering my own question. I think the first thing that I think of is let's just look at the basics. Let's not even look at anything profound. Airport security became tighter. Okay, so let's go a layer deeper. Maybe there was some xenophobia. Maybe there was some Islamophobia. Maybe you saw a shift in the way that our media speaks about the Middle East. Now, obviously, this was a reasoning to go to war, and there's arguably effects from the war in the Middle East that are still being seen today. But what I'm wondering is, did it divide the country into, okay, full-on support this war and full-on do not support this war, or do you think that there was an overall shift in perspective that 9/11 caused?
I have a tough time seeing that shift on a mass scale. I think it was already, I'd argue it's already in place. Like I saw 9/11 changed like certain things about your day-to-day life, but not really like airport security and things like that. I don't feel like it was like a shift in any way.
So you don't see it as a change?
No, I don't. I really do think that, like, I don't know, I haven't really thought that people's mentality have really changed since since the 60s, really. I'd really say, like, since then it's been same shit, different spoon, you know?
So you're saying that from Cold War to Gulf War to war in Vietnam to 9/11, this is all more or less the same thing, and that people have not changed their opinions?
Not that they haven't changed their opinions, but that like en masse, that I haven't really, like, I have a tough time seeing any like large discrepancies between how, you know, like between how we functioned as a society. You know what I mean? Since the counterculture was shut down in the United States, I really don't see any kind of opposition or you know, counter thinking. Like I don't really see it. Like,
so then maybe what I was trying to get at was that the effect that 9/11 had on the American zeitgeist, in my opinion, was an effect of reinforcing whatever opinion you already had. So when you said same shit, different spoon, that's what I thought of. That if you were anti-war, you're still going to be anti-war after 9/11, and you're going to...
More intensely.
Sorry? Yes, more intensely. Exactly. It intensifies your
Yeah.
view. And if you're pro-war, well, guess what? You have a lot of a stronger argument in your head to go to war. So I wanted to steer the conversation in the direction that, you know, will there... I guess whereas Daria wants to say yes, 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 I'm sort of on the I'm not so sure fence. I'm going to be playing the no side here. I'm going to be saying, well, whatever you already believed is going to be intensified by this pandemic. If you were already xenophobic, well, guess what? Shut down the borders. We can't let anyone who's infected in. If you were not, it's going to be, we need to be as open borders as possible. We need to be cooperating. We need to be sharing supplies, right? Like that's kind of where I'm getting at. So I know that maybe you fully disagree, Daria, but Baptiste, do you have a yes or a no answer to the question that we're asking?
So which question are we asking right now? Is it
just the overall question? Will COVID-19 create a new generation of boomers?
Okay, I mean, I can see that in like the humorous sense of like, oh, like, okay, boomer, fuck you, boomer, and we'll be like, oh, well, back in my day, we had the COVID-19 and we couldn't do shit for 4 months, you know, like that type of boomer I can see us doing. But like, I don't think we'll be like, oh, like, just get a job. It's easy. It's like, no, bitch, like we fucking like out of college, you can't just get a job. Like those boomers are way more annoying than we're gonna be, I think. But it's gonna be like a new boomer type So I kind of like the name Zoomers too, but maybe like a millennial boom shit.
Millennial boom shit. Well said.
I was thinking of this a moomer,
Yeah.
of course.
Oh
Oh,
god.
I like Moomers. Moomers.
It's cringy
I don't
too,
like
right?
that.
Yeah, it makes you cringe. Like, moomer. That's our slogan.
Yeah, in terms of like the humor of it and like, oh, like, do we like boomers at all right now? No. Like, people will be like, oh, well, stop talking about the corona. We were all through it. It's like, but I don't think we'll be as mindset different than the people that are like 20 and 20. We won't be like that much different than them in terms of mindset. I think just like
Okay.
right now, the people that are 50 are definitely way different than we are in terms of mindset.
Okay, dokie.
I think it'll get closer.
So Monica,
That's
how do you
fine.
answer your own question? Are we gonna become
think-
boomers?
I feel like it can go in either or maybe even both ways. So I definitely feel that there are millennials who are adopting sort of those mindsets that boomers have, where it's like, oh, we need to be conservative, we need to watch out for ourselves, we're more important, we need to find out. So that's why you're seeing like a lot of panic buyers and a lot of irrational thinking. And I think that's unfortunate. I don't think all the millennials are doing it, but I do think that there's been a shift. The other thing that I was thinking about was, how boomers sort of started after, I believe, World War II, after, all the people were in war and then they come home and they start making babies. I feel like after quarantine, we're going to be breeding a new generation of boomers, because I feel like a lot of people are more inclined to be with their significant others and start, baby making.
So what you meant was literally creating a new generation of boomers. You were saying you weren't
I
even
meant it both
necessarily
ways.
okay. So you were big brain. Okay, so Monica was going for the double entendre. She was saying we gonna make baby boomers, but we also gonna become baby boomers. Okay, so we all have kind of different.
Yeah, I agree with her. Yeah.
We actually yes. I would say that we're due for a boomer generation. Like I thought Gen Z would become the boomer generation, but it's not looking like that. I don't know
They're
much
called
about.
quarantine babies now.
What? How the hell would Gen Z become? That's very interesting.
Well, okay, Daria, I could quickly explain that, but it's a little out of scope. I basically thought that Zoomers would have a conservative backlash to millennial liberalism, but that doesn't seem to be the case. They seem to be just like kind of apathetic. So I don't know much about Gen Alpha. Gen Alpha is 2012 and beyond, from what I read in Wikipedia last time. So maybe this will become an amendment to Gen Alpha. Maybe it'll become its own thing. But I do think, if nothing, that a post-quarantine generation will have its own denomination and its own quirks and its own traits. And definitely it will, like you said, they'll start popping out when everyone's happy that they're free from quarantine. I'm actually curious, after the Spanish flu, was there a post-Spanish flu generation? I'll look that up while you guys talk about something that's on topic, but I'm gonna do that on my.
Well, actually, I kind of read about it. No, there wasn't a boom. No, there actually wasn't really a boom of population before World War II. Not even after World War I.
Wow. So
I don't know
what was different? The Great War is over and World War One. Why are people not celebrating like they did after World War II?
Well, the United States entered really late into the war. Didn't they enter like 1916,
I think it was 17.
Okay, but
Yeah.
they entered
17, right?
late in
Like
World
1
War
year
II as well.
1 year is not really enough time for someone to start missing you, I guess. That's like would be my, but in some aspects, World War One had the GIs that had such a traumatic. World War One is horrible. It's terrible,
Oh, yeah.
right?
They
You have
fucked them
cavalry
up,
Russian machine guns. Like there's crazy shit like that. I mean, not comparing the violence of both wars, but saying that like we entered late into the war. I think that really definitely affected it. That generation is known as the lost generation too. They just kind of came back from such a traumatizing experience, and they kind of just veered off into like they there was a lot of like unemployment, and people were like the questioning the society. Like, they're like, I just went through the like worst war in Western history. What's the point of anything?
Okay.
You get a lot of that. You get a lot of apathy. You get a lot of Zoomers. They can get a lot of apathy out of that. Whereas I think we came out of World War II like, no, we have a purpose now. Like, Japan is defeated, Nazi Germany is defeated. Like, we can build the world anew.
Actually, I kind of I want to draw a parallel between what happened after World War II and what we're predicting could happen now. There was kind of a clearly wrong side in World War II for one of the first times in history. Like, there were objectively bad guys, right? You don't side with people who have concentration camps and who want mass genocide, right? So we can all collectively point our fingers and say COVID-19 is a bad thing, and that's a little abstract. But I think what we touched on is sort of the celebration of a purpose, of coming back and finding your purpose. And anecdotally, I've just heard a lot of sort of boomer-aged people say, oh, this time off has given me a new perspective on life. Why am I spending so much time at work when I have this to attend to at home? I'm missing out on the moments in life by working so hard, blah, 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 right? I've anecdotally heard this a lot. So I think that as an amendment to what we're already talking about, I think maybe we'll see some shift in the older generations who are quote unquote working too hard and saw that time off is actually not bad. Maybe we'll see the opposite effect on millennials, where it's like, oh, I wasn't working hard at all at this time. I was poor. I need to work harder. I need to be more conservative. And maybe I'm now that I'm thinking about it, maybe you'll see just sort of a change in perspective no matter where you fall. If you're left leaning, maybe you're going to have a right shift. If you're right leaning, maybe you'll have a left shift. Like, that's sort of where I'm thinking now, but maybe you guys can weigh in on that.
Buddy, Monica, you want to go first, or?
No, you can go. I want to hear kind of what you had to say.
Sure. So Kia, if I was following correctly, you were talking about political shifts from millennials between
potentially.
Oh, I see. I feel like there is talking about traumatic or like big events in society that change the way we think or behave. I feel like that's a really excellent way to create boomers, I guess, as Monica was saying. Right? Because if millennials don't turn out to be boomers, then perhaps the reaction against millennials, which you thought would be Gen Z, right?
Yes.
So our children, really. Because the reaction is always children to parent. I feel like the generation of kids that come are fighting against their parents' ideologies. So I feel like if we're really annoying millennials, I feel like we could easily breed more boomers, perpetuate the vicious cycle.
So you're leaning more in towards the breeding side.
As now I'm gonna explore it, let's say, because I was also, when Monica was talking about creating boomers, I was like, that's pretty interesting, because how many Reagan era, like people that turned 25 or like 20 to mid 20s in the 80s, or that became or even the early 90s, their parents were like some of them, their parents were hippies. And it's interesting to see that like the 80s that embodied corporate culture the most, right? Rigid, strict rules, and like go to work. And 80s is kind of a peak boomer mentality. Those were the children of the counterculture. And it's a trope to have like, hippie parent, but a really responsible child, that's kind of a character archetype.
Okay.
So that could be pretty interesting if millennials just turn out to be as useless as they are right now. Maybe perhaps the backlash of their kids are going to be like, I'm going to have to become a boomer, like, in order to like make things right, you know?
Well, aren't the responsible kids of the hippie parents the millennials?
No, they would be I guess they would, well,
Because Gen X are hippies. Yeah.
oh
Actually,
no,
some boomers were hippies until they became boomers.
Gen X, that's true too. I guess it's not really, they're not labeled as a generation. I like to label them by like, just, I call them like the corporate, like, because 80s is so like, you know, Reagan and you know, corporation bonanza. Like there's a clear shift between
Yeah.
in America. The 80s was, I guess, when we sold our soul.
Yes.
For good.
100%.
Like good, you know, that is in some sense that's just as big as a societal shift than you know, coming back from World War II, really. Because that we made a firm decision in that moment. Well, the country made a firm decision in that moment, you know, to become like a corporate society.
Yeah.
So that entails a lot of, you know, different variables and things like that. So what was I getting at? Sorry, I lost my train of thought.
I asked whether millennials.
Sorry. Yeah, they're the children of hippies, really, because if you're going to turn mid-20s in the 80s or even early 20s in the 80s, right, straight out of college, going into talking like 1980, you know, or 1984, 1985, you know what I mean? You launch yourself into, you know, the start of corporate society. Your parents are hippies from the 60s. They probably had you in 1960, right? 1958.
Yep. Okay.
But technically, that puts you in a boomer actually situation, too.
Yeah, that's definitely boomer territory. But I think we got a little distracted here. Maybe Monica, do you want to rein us in?
I'll be honest, I kind of got lost, like trying to follow the train of thought. So
okay,
you can move on if you want to go on to something else.
Well, I just wanted your opinion, but there's nothing I really wanted to move on to. We're trying to flesh out the idea of whether there will be boomers that are born from this pandemic, basically, and if they're go for it.
I mean, yeah, I think it's really interesting because I think it's one of those rare situations where we kind of don't know what's going to happen, because I feel like, you know, in previous events, we didn't have the power of social media to kind of influence everyone. It's kind of like, oh yeah, like it's just really a matter of where you grew up and who you hung around with. And right now, you know, we have technology to connect us all over the world and different viewpoints and understanding all these points of views. So I think it really, I mean, I don't know what to expect from this next generation because, you know, it could go if you follow, you know, I see a lot of people who grew up in conservative families who are adopting a lot of liberal mindsets. And, you know, I don't know how boomer-like these new generation of boomers are going to be. I mean, they can be liberal, they can be xenophobic. I really don't know on how that's going to turn out. And I think that's kind of the interesting thing that we should be like analyzing.
I just thought of something. One important note is that people, especially older millennials, Gen X, boomers, they're going to be way more reliant on traditional media during this pandemic than they have been before. Okay? They're going to be looking at, if they subscribe to Fox News, they're going to be looking at Fox News every day to see, hey, what's the latest update? You know, if you're a white feminist, you're going to be looking at NBC and you're going to be looking at CNN. If you're a liberal, an American liberal, you'll be watching those same channels. If you're a leftist, you're not subscribing to American traditional media. So,
well, I was focusing more on like, you know, my generation, like the 90s babies who are on like Twitter, and you know, you're getting a bunch of different viewpoints. Oh, okay.
So that's the gut reaction I had. It's like, oh my God, the role that media plays in this is huge. That's going to be, in my opinion, what defines the shift, if there is any. So I'm going to make the prediction that anybody who relies on traditional media, does not matter what branch, if any sort of CNN, NBC, Fox, whatever, they're going to become the boomers. Those are the targets of who are going to become the boomers. Now, when we talk about social media, when we talk about maybe us, I guess I meant to say early millennials. We're the late millennials, and the Generation Z, the Zoomers. We're going to be, we're already in our social media bubbles, right? Whatever bubble you're subscribed to, it's going to amplify those feelings because everybody's going to chime in from their lens, from their worldview, and you're already subscribed to these channels. You're going to be fed more information from that same lens. So basically, my prediction is now whoever subscribes to traditional media will become more conservative. Whoever is subscribed to social media as their primary source of news and engagement, well, whatever bubble they're already subscribed to, that feeling is going to intensify. So overall, I think, yes, I now have an answer. Yes, COVID-19 will definitely create a new generation of boomers from existing people who subscribe to traditional media and those in social circles that follow conservative people. So, and I think those will outnumber the ones who become more liberal. So, yeah, that's what I think now.
Well, I don't even think you would need. I mean, yeah, for sure. I'd even argue social media, whether or not you're subscribed to a conservative outlet on it or not. I'd argue social media would just turn you into a boomer too. Anything that's hive mind mentality just turns you into a boomer.
Agreed.
I think you can kind of already tell who's going to be a boomer or not. I mean, you see people who are staying indoors and kind of following the stay-at-home orders are, I feel like they tend to be more of the non-boomers. And then you have people who are protesting in Huntington Beach and all over the country. And they're like, oh, you need to go out. Like, you can't quarantine us. Like, we need to do our thing. Those tend to be the boomers because and I see some of my friends who are like, oh, well, it's okay for me to go outside because it's only once in a while. And I feel like that there's a special sort of mentality that these people have where, these rules don't apply to them. They can do what they want to do because they don't feel like they should be kept inside, if that makes sense.
Well, I would actually, this is interesting. I would argue the opposite, that what makes you a boomer is staying inside all the time. Here's why I would say that. Boomers are very, very dependent on what the institutions tell them to do, right? If you're a boomer, you're gonna see, oh, well, you know what? The government told me to do this. Like, it's probably a good idea to do it. And if you don't do it, you're a dumbass. You're like, that's sheep mentality. And part of sheep mentality is being able to conform to whatever thing that you think gives power to the society, whatever doctrine that it's like, sorry, whatever decree they give is now all of a sudden doctrine. So I would argue that makes you into a boomer.
I make that argument because I feel like boomers don't, like, for example, the Huntington Beach protests, they're convinced that the coronavirus is a lie. So I feel like,
really?
so yeah,
the boomers here that's actually pretty interesting. Please delve into that, because the boomers on my side of the fence, they're convinced that Corona is super real and that it's killing everybody.
Monica, before you answer, can you try to touch on this point? Weirdo asks an important question. He says, "At one point, is one considered a boomer?" So maybe you can touch on that in your response.
It's a great.
Okay. Thank you,
question. That one weirdo. Yeah. Great name, by the way.
So, I mean, I think the point where you become a boomer, in my opinion, is when you start thinking, like, when I was growing up, my parents were like, oh, when you grow up, you're going to understand everything. You'll get it when you grow up. And I'm very convinced where I don't agree with what they did, even as an adult. And I think that when you become a boomer, you kind of say like, oh, I agree with what my parents did, or, oh, I agree with that, or this makes sense now. And then you start following in those footsteps. And I think that just following the previous generation of what they were doing, a lot of conservative values, that's kind of what makes you a boomer. My parents are very conservative. They're not, I wouldn't say they're totally right-wing, but, they have a lot of modest values being an Asian family. And, growing up as an Asian American, I respect those modest values because of culture. But the reality is I grew up in America where there's a lot of sexual freedom. There's a lot of um, there's a lot of stuff going on right now, and
There's
I
freedom.
don't agree. Yeah. So like my parents, you know, they were very stuck on the mentality where it's like, oh, you shouldn't be dating, you shouldn't have sex or whatever. And I'm very much for you should abort that baby if you have a baby. If you don't want that baby, you should totally have the right to birth
Yeet it
control.
out of here, bro.
Yeah. So I think that growing up, if you start saying, oh, I see why my parents did that, or I wouldn't want my child doing that, I think that's kind of what makes you a boomer, where you kind of become your parents.
You know, I think one of the most important things you touched on is embracing the status quo, is conforming, like Daria was talking about, becoming a sheep. Whatever you hear, you accept. You don't question the current system. You don't question the state of affairs, and you accept it as the way it is, and you conform to it.
On the flip side, though, going back to what Dari was talking about his boomers on, I believe you're in LA County. I'm in OC, so you're seeing a lot of people from Laguna Beach, and a lot of people from Newport Beach, and a lot of people from Huntington Beach. A lot of conservative white people who are disagreeing with the whole. Yeah, they all want to reopen businesses. They all want to, stop the quarantine, and they don't want to listen, and they're convinced that coronavirus is a lie. And I think it's really interesting. Maybe OC is kind of a rare case, but I'm seeing that a lot of the Zoomers and millennials are like, no, we should stay home. Like, this is for the greater good. We're helping them. And a lot of the boomers are very stubborn, and they feel that the coronavirus is a lie and that they should open businesses and that they are sort of above the virus.
Well, just a quick note. I want to make a quick note, Daria. I don't think it's rare. I don't think it's surprising because OC is incredibly conservative compared to LA County. And as we were talking about earlier, yes. Oh, okay, yeah. And then obviously your children will be like not conforming to your beliefs for the most part. So I'll let you pick that back up, Daria. Sorry.
What's really, that's pretty interesting. It's so strange that like boomers have the most to lose, right? Like if they catch it, they're most at risk. So it's interesting that they're the ones that are protesting going on. It's almost like, whereas millennials and Zoomers, they don't have anything to lose if they catch it. Really.
Yeah, but Daria, are the boomers running the business? No, the 19-year-old employee that they pay minimum wage is running the business. That's what you gotta realize.
That is a good point, but those 19-year-old employees do like to make the money, so they can. I feel like they'd want to go back. I don't know. That's weird. That's such a flip. It's a flip.
Yeah.
I guess it just shows you. It just shows you how much perspective.
Well, they're out of touch.
Well, I mean, for me, I feel like these boomers are listening to whatever Fox News that they're watching, that whatever information that they're getting fed.
Well, no, Fox News is perpetuating that the corona is like a pandemic, like scary scenario.
Daria, no. You're completely wrong. I just watched a full.
Oh no, I saw some headlines from Fox 11.
Daria, maybe recently, but I watched a full John Oliver episode.
Yeah.
Listen, I watched literally a full 20-minute episode that was denouncing Fox News's coverage of COVID-19. They weren't.
But John Oliver is also, that's another extreme of the spectrum.
Daria, bear with me. It's reasonable. Like, they were literally not covering. They were comparing. Daria, bear with me. They were comparing coronavirus to the flu up until the point that it had over 50,000 deaths worldwide. So they were really late to the game. Conservative media as a whole has historically been dismissive of things like this, and once again, they were dismissive, including Fox News, about COVID-19. So
that argument, they're late to the game, but now they're in it, and the Huntington.
Now they're in it. Yes.
No, but the Huntington protest
was last week. That was last week.
So that's what I'm saying.
So
that's exactly my argument. Is they were already Fox News is in the game now. They're perpetuating.
Now they are. Now, yes.
Yeah, but that's what counts because that's what throws fuel on the fire for people to think it's to go and protest,
But you have to realize, did COVID-19 start now? No, it started a month ago. People have been fed this for about 3 weeks, and now they change their opinion. They're like, things might have gotten bad, but I still know it's
that touches upon something a lot deeper. Is it doesn't matter what the fucking opinion is. It just matters that they have control over your tendencies. It doesn't freaking matter if you think one day people don't have any values. When you have no values, what are you supposed to do? You whatever whatever thing you trust switches sides.
But what
you're not
fits the
gonna
narrative?
You're
But you have
as a
I
to.
mean, okay, I think to argue for Kia's sake, because I think I get where he's going. So, Fox News kind of denounced the whole coronavirus thing, saying it was a flu from early on. And I think right now, where they're starting to take it more seriously, I feel like the damage has already been done to these boomers because you've been fed that this coronavirus isn't a big deal, it's not a problem, you should still be able to go outside, face masks aren't necessary, blah, 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 blah. And now that they're suddenly flipping the switch, they feel like, well, no, I still don't believe it because they were initially fed that information. So I feel like they already did the damage by putting in the information in their heads that they shouldn't be worried. And now that Fox News is telling them, oh, you should be worried, they're very defensive and they're very quick to say like, well, no, now this doesn't make any sense. I am protesting. I don't believe in this. I should be able to go out. I should be blah, 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 blah. And, although Fox News is, as you were saying, spreading correct information, so to speak. I'm sorry?
Who said that? Who said Fox News is spreading correct information?
Well, okay, not correct, but you did say that they were.
Any of us would ever say that.
Not correct information, but they are spreading information that the coronavirus is serious.
I do want to interject because I think it's very important that we put this on the table. That I think part of being a boomer is not. You guys keep fixating on conservative media outlets, especially Fox News. I absolutely disagree with that. Part of being a boomer is being able to pool all sources of media and conform it to your opinion. I watch Fox News, but I also watch CNN. And when I watch CNN, it might by them, if I think everything CNN says is a lie, then I could use that to justify my own and embolden my own opinion that so happens to coincide with Fox News as well. That's really important too. It's everything is related. You can't have Fox News without CNN, and you can't have CNN without Fox News. They exist together.
Daria, I agree, but you have to look at the narratives that are being pushed. Okay, Fox News, but listen, let me speak.
No, you shouldn't fixate on. That's the problem here. We shouldn't fixate on one narrative that's propelled by one media. We should fixate on the grand narrative that's perpetuated by all of them pooled together. That's the silver lining.
But Daria, when you have people talking about reopening the economy and people not talking about reopening the economy, you have to look at who's saying what. So what I'm getting at is, okay, maybe Fox News, other conservative outlets, not just Fox News, have now shifted their narrative to COVID is serious, but we can slowly let up and reopen the economy versus more liberal news sources saying that absolutely not. Now is not the time to reopen the economy. We need to take stringent measures. We need to follow in the lead of other countries. And at the same time, you have states like Texas, Georgia, I think South Carolina that are reopening as early as next week. That's the difference that I want to point out. That yes, you're right. They're two sides. In my opinion, they're two sides of the same coin, CNN and Fox News. I don't consider either of them reliable. I consider both of them as pushing corporate narrative. But there is an obvious difference between the two covering this matter as originally dismissive and now still technically dismissive by insinuating that the economy is ready to be reopened versus other media outlets that are fear-mongering, the almost opposite of dismissive. They are fear-mongering, and they are saying that this is super deadly. They're bringing in, oh my God, this woman in Italy couldn't give birth because she didn't speak Italian and she was American and she tried to speak and nobody understood her, but luckily there's a translator. A lot of emotional appeal, fear-mongering versus dismissive attitude and almost like apathetic. So those are the differences that I want to point out. That I still think are both sides of the same coin.
I really like this. I think you brought up two pillars that are very interesting. You brought up that one side is dismissive and one side fear mongers. I think that's fantastic.
It's paranoia versus ignorance.
To also go back to the question a little bit and to tie it in with Monica was saying too, I really think that having that extreme, the mentality of extremes, of binary opposition, one versus the other, bad versus good versus bad, all that. I feel like that is a really boomer. That's what makes you into a boomer. And I think COVID is a great testing ground for that because exactly. COVID is, if you're not dismissive, or if you're not, like, there is no middle ground, right? Just as there never was in this country. You can't be in the middle, right? And not being in the middle is very destructive.
If you're in the
Because
middle, you're a centrist, and if you're a centrist, that means you're conservative.
it's yeah, it's extremely bizarre because situations have certain responses that need to pool from both extremes, such as this one.
Yeah, it's
I
almost
think
like
that
not all issues are partisan issues.
they're not. This one is not a partisan issue. It's like, but to make it a partisan issue is, I guess that was the bigger picture I was trying to get at by making COVID a partisan issue, which is very well succeeded in doing. Is like, it's killer. I think that's really what's killing us, like making some people, whether they're, that's pretty interesting. It doesn't go to, like, how funny in the OC that the boomers are dismissive and the younger generation are fear mongers, and maybe on our side of the fence it's a little the opposite, where the youth are like, no, I need to, like, go out and breathe some fresh air, and then the boomers are like, you're gonna kill me if you come back home.
I mean, I think it's just kind of a rare. I mean, maybe
I
it's
don't
just
think
because
it's a
I'm
rare
in my
case.
own bubble of OC. But yeah, I mean, I definitely see that my friends who are going out, like, it's like, what are you doing? Like, you're doing what all these people are protesting about. Like, I associate all these people and my friends who are going out and doing their thing as if nothing's going on. I think that they're boomers. They
Monica,
have
I
this
think your
boomer
case is
mentality.
emblematic of the majority. I don't think you have a rare case. That's what I wanted to say.
Agree. I was gonna just say that too.
So would
Yeah.
you say that the LA thing is kind of a rare case then?
Yes,
Where, okay.
absolutely. Your LA, your Chicago, your New York, those are the rare cases. The OC, that's literally the rest of the country, you know?
Okay, well, I mean, I wasn't sure because okay, well, all right, and you guys had a rare case.
I think it's emblematic of Monica's case, and ours is like emblematic of the urban bubbles that we live in. Maybe,
Absolutely.
like, why the fuck are we judging what Georgia does or what Alabama does? Like, we don't fucking know how they live. Like, they have their own quality. They do their own thing, and it's been working. And honestly, like, it's not like thousands and troves are dying in those states. Like, it's an absolutely ridiculous, like,
Oh, I totally forgot to bring this up. The United States is the country in the world with the most deaths from COVID-19. I think that might actually be a good statistic to point at when we say, will this cause massive differences? Just to tie it back to the original question. I think what we just did is we touched on whether our living people will become boomers or not. And I think we've successfully fleshed that out. What do you guys think?
Well, I did kind of touch on the non-living.
No.
People.
But my point is we can probably move on to that. We can focus on the next generation now. What do you guys think?
Well, I think we did cover this generation. I think we can move on to that one.
All right, Mr. Silent Baptiste, who is understandably working. What is your take before we move on? Do you agree with what we've said? Do you think that there will be a living transformation into boomers more so than the opposite direction where boomers become more liberal?
I mean, I agree that this is going to change like a lot of people's perspectives on like, all right, well, now in my life, I'm going to start doing this instead of doing that. Like, it's going to change a lot of opinions and stuff. I'm not sure it'll change that much politically because people are still like, oh, well, like if you're right wing, you're going to be even more right wing, to be honest. If you're left, you're going to be like, oh, these right wingers are even more conservative now. So fuck them. I'm going to stay. I don't think people are going to change that much political views wise. What I want to kind of know is our take on like, if when this ends, COVID-19, how many more people are going to be in the world in a year? Like the day it ends, 9 months later, I want to see a stat that says how many have been born, like that'd be interesting to see. Like, when like a country wins a World Cup and then like they look 9 months later, they're like, yeah, we had a huge spike in babies like this because people were just straight going to town celebrating, So I also want to like talk about that. Like people this is going to be crap, but people are going to be fucking raw after this shit, bro. I swear to God. Like, I'm not. That's what's going to happen.
All right. Well, Dario was touching on this, and I briefly mentioned the Spanish flu. For those who don't know, In World War One, near the end of World War One, an influenza strain broke out, now known as the Spanish flu. Sidebar: is that racist? Should it not be called the Spanish flu? Let us know. Anyway, it was known as the Spanish flu. It's still known as the Spanish flu. It killed millions worldwide, if I'm correct. It was very deadly. An interesting anecdote about the Spanish flu: after the curve had started bending downwards, people got complacent. They started celebrating. They went out in massive crowds, and it led to an even worse outbreak of the Spanish flu. So please don't celebrate early. Let the curve fully flatten before going out. Getting back on topic.
Agreed.
I asked, is the Spanish flu a reason that people started boinking, as Baptiste is alluding to? And Daria says that the answer is no. I'm going to quickly verify that on my own here, but I'll let you guys take off from here.
I said the answer is no on the scale of boomers.
Oh.
Right. Like not on that mass scale, right?
Okay.
Is that what we're...
Yeah, no, well, that's the benchmark, right? We were seeing if there's going to be a boom. Yeah.
Yeah, just to be clear, yeah. I mean, I'm sure they were boinking, but were they boinking where, like, doubles the population or whatever?
Right.
Let's see.
I mean, can we compare the Spanish flu to the coronavirus, though?
The Spanish flu was way worse, just to be fair.
I think it is way worse, but I think that
it infected a third of the world's population, and 17 to 50 million people died. So it is on a different scale.
It is on a different scale, but I think you were mentioning how there was not like double the population, if I'm correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that even though it did affect a lot of people, but there wasn't necessarily a lot of, reproduction going on, I think you can't really compare that because, like you said, that was going on during, I believe, the war times. So right now, as far as I'm concerned, we don't have like a giant world war going on. And I think our generation is very set on like, the hookup culture where we're constantly going out, we're constantly having hookups, blah, blah, blah. And now that this thing is kind of coming to a halt, I feel like there is a possibility that once this is over, even though it's on a smaller scale than the Spanish flu, it's a possibility that, since we were so used to living a certain way of, casually hooking up, I think it's possible that we're going to have like a really high spike in reproduction or babies or whatever.
Might just randomly choose to settle down. I used like that could be it. Like the fear of
yeah, because you feel like
back into solitude, such as isolation.
Mm-hmm.
You might just go grab partner, and then I'm pretty sad. He's great.
I want to point out a key difference between Spanish flu and this flu. Young people were mostly affected by the Spanish flu, and that's the complete opposite of what we're seeing right now.
Whoa, weird.
I mean, like after Kobe died, that was kind of its own thing, and like you got like a lot of random guys just hitting up girls saying like, "Hey, I want to settle down now." So I mean, it's not like totally
boys though.
Wait,
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Oh my gosh! So it's like a thing online where obviously it's totally like a different subject, but after Kobe died, like there was a lot of guys just hitting up their girlfriends or like their ex-flames.
Next podcast, did Kobe cause marriages?
No, but like you see a lot of guys texting a lot of their ex-girlfriends or like hookups or whatever they are, and they're like, "Hey, like Kobe's death got me thinking, like life is really important. I want to settle down with you," and like blah blah blah.
Yeah, that sounds like some fuckboy shit.
Yeah, that was like mostly Twitter shit, but I can definitely see a lot of guys.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying it's not toxic at all, but like that's just the reality of what happened. So like I feel like after the coronavirus thing, it's like, hey, like I really miss our time together. I really miss being with you. Like we should get together and like enjoy life. Like now that coronavirus is over. I mean, I feel like that's definitely a possibility.
I agree with Monica on that for sure.
Yeah. Easily.
And it's more, and it's deep rooted. It's like I'm a loser and I'm lonely, but if I have a partner, I at least have someone else to be a loser with, not lonely. And so that is a really powerful, incentive to settle down. What if the media is already talking about, like, which I think is fascinating. They're already talking about resurgence of corona. So that's already a motivation for people to settle down. Like, imagine what would be interesting is if we have like 2 months of way back to things were, right, where you can move around freely. But then if it hits again and we go back into isolation, in that scenario,
well, that will happen, by the way. I'm predicting that exact scenario will happen, and we'll see that in the fall, like in October. I think things will let up. I think things will let up once the summer hits, and then we'll see it resurge in the fall, as most viruses usually do. And we will have another period of isolation, perhaps shorter, but I do think we will be under isolation again, so you will be able to test out that theory.
It'd be interesting how many people settle down. I want to go. Monica brought up a really great parallel with the Kobe. It's like people, usually fuckboys, but people will take any opportunity they have to exploit the situation,
Okay, I have a very interesting quote from a side effect of the Spanish flu here, and I want to discuss it. Okay, I'm going to switch to browser view real quick. Historian Nancy Bristow has argued that the pandemic, when combined with the increasing number of women attending college, contributed to the success of women in the field of nursing. This was due in part to the failure of medical doctors, who were predominantly men, to contain and prevent the illness. Nursing staff, who were mainly women, celebrated the success of their patient care and did not associate the spread of the disease with their work. Now, where I think this is interesting is that we have a systemic failure in politics. We see, and this has been a theme since a long time, a system that simply doesn't work. We see that leadership is failing us left and right. We see that bipartisan any sort of bipartisan tasks is seemingly impossible, and we see a direct backlash, right? So men were not taking charge as medical doctors. We see a resurgence in women. What does this tell us about boomers and millennials? I really hope that this is finally the time for millennials to become politicized, that this is finally the time for millennials to become involved in politics and learn from the mistakes of their boomers. I really, really hope so, based on this one historian's anecdote from the Spanish flu. Nope, didn't strike a chord with anyone. Sick.
Oh, yes. No, I mean, to me, are you saying that there were... So if I understand correctly, you're saying there were more women in the medical field after the Spanish flu because they just got involved. Yeah, but then the scary part is what happened to women after the 20s. They went back into the kitchen like in the 40s and the 50s.
Oh,
so that's kind of fucked up.
Well, that was under a time. Well, that was under a war. Yeah, I mean, a war. I mean, war brings out conservative values, right? That's just always what happens.
Yeah, but you can't have. It's super inconsistent to have like an en masse, right? Like the point is that anything mass is super inconsistent. That's the beauty of it always being exploited, is like you could have a lot more women in the medical field or in other professions, and you're like, oh my god, that's fantastic, finally we're moving forward, progress with gender equality, right? But then all it takes is a war, right? All it takes is a war for you to revert everything back to the 1800s style of like gender dynamics.
Okay, like, but don't you think that there could be a temporary
for sure.
Like this sort of thing I'm describing? Don't you think that could temporarily happen?
I'd agree. Temporary happen for sure. Given the historical trend, it's a big possibility.
That's cool. So in that regards, what implication do we think that this has on the generation not yet to be born? Well, if the historical data is that there was no boom after a Spanish flu, or just an insignificant boom, what were you saying, Daria? Based off of what your mic's muted, but what would you say?
If
you said after the Spanish flu there was a boom, but it wasn't as big as the baby boomer boom, or there just wasn't a boom at all?
And do I think there will be a boom right now?
I'm just asking, what did you see in the data that you looked at?
Oh, just that. Just pure hard facts. Just that.
No, what was it? What was it? Just not as big as a boom, but there was still a boom?
Oh yeah. Oh, sorry. I didn't see a boom. I gotta tell you, I didn't even see a boom. Well, that's it. It's kind of like Monica was saying. When you got a war and an epidemic, that's
Okay.
kind of like
Okay. So
that's kind of
too hard to compare. Okay. Well, okay. Well,
what I'm saying is you have more deaths than when you have more deaths. When you have double death front, I feel war and epidemic. I feel like that kills lovers, that kills spouses, that kills all
Well, I
sorts
think
of
that's kind of what contributed to why the baby boom was so big, because you were dealing with World War One, the Spanish flu, World War Two. World War
yeah.
Two, I feel like that was kind of like a marking point where it's like finally we can finally celebrate and like get together. Yeah.
one big difference. There was an economic boom after World War II. There's going to be an economic recession after this pandemic. I think actually, huh?
Don't forget the 20s. There was an immense economic boom in the 1920s.
That's true. But let's not draw too many comparisons to the Spanish flu. Now that I think about it, I think in terms of a boom, I don't think they're comparable. So let's just focus on what we think will happen now. And honestly, I just brought up an economic recession. I've decided there won't be a boom. I don't think there will be a baby boom. If you're poor, if you're broke, what babies are you going to make? Now, there is obviously the argument that impoverished people actually reproduce more than those who are wealthy. But the baby boom happened during a time of economic prosperity for the whole country. Not necessarily that only rich people got babies. That's not what I'm saying. But during an economic recession, I find it hard to imagine that there would be a boom of any sort. So I'm sort of leaning towards no here, that there won't be a baby boom.
I mean, I disagree, but I mean, I feel like my main driving factor to say I disagree is just the whole sort of the way we live life, you know? Like, I feel like it's a lot of people are gonna want to go hook up and go meet up and do these toxic behaviors that they were doing and manipulate someone. And especially since we're not in a war, we're not used to staying home. I feel like now that we're all going to be liberated, we're all going to want to go and, have sex and go crazy and like reproduce like bunnies.
Like small bunnies, yes. So, I'm not. Yeah, but dude, we have such access to contraception compared to 1918, compared to 1945, 1960, right? People are gonna hook up. You're right, but they'll use a condom. Like I don't see.
Those don't always work.
Be dumb.
They don't always
No,
work.
okay. Condoms don't always work. Is not going to attribute to a baby boom.
But like here, you gotta
Condoms
think
are
about
trash.
So yeah, you got people like Baptiste who are reproducing. Like, I mean, I think there's a lot of women who take birth control, and again, birth control isn't necessarily effective. And then you have women who have, for example, IUDs, and those are super effective. But I mean, a lot of women are also scared to get IUDs. So then you're saying, okay, well, you can just abort the baby or take a Plan B. A lot of people can't afford Plan B because it's like $50 maybe. And then a lot of people are afraid to go get aborted because, what happens, unfortunately, is that, you say like, oh, I'm going to get an abortion. It's not the easiest thing to do. There's a lot of emotional attachment going on because once it really happens, you're like, shoot, like this is my baby, I'm going to abort. Some people don't care and they're just going to, eat it. And then there's other people who say like, you know what, I'm going to go through with this. Like, I don't think I can. So I think that even though there's a lot of access to contraception, you have to think about, are all these people going to necessarily use it?
Monica, I hear your points, but the fact is access to contraception is better than it ever has been, and the effectiveness of it is better than it ever has been. So I think you're just going down the road of what could happen in one particular case, and you're getting into the topic of an abortion or Plan B, but I don't think it'll even get that far. That's my point.
Well, how many people screw up the contraception to begin with?
Yeah.
I think that, like, I see Monica's
Okay,
point.
but baby booms are intentional, not accidental. So I don't think there is any possibility of an accidental baby boom.
Who who said they have to be intentional? They could definitely be accidental. Imagine, I mean, it's a low. Granted, the possibility is a lot lower. However, it's still, I would argue, it's still a pretty strong possibility that you could have an accidental baby boom, because at least, like, how many people do you think are getting knocked up? You know,
okay. Honestly, I'm gonna agree with Dreamy in chat here. He says simply, even if people do hook up, there's all this stuff that stops people from having babies. Okay, look, you guys.
But what stuff?
You guys, what do you mean? What stuff? Contraception, Plan B, abortion.
Dude,
Also,
do you know how many
have you heard of
guys
pulling out?
bro?
Pulling out is also an effective low IQ technique.
Yeah, have you heard of pulling out?
No, I haven't. Anyway, so the point is, look, I don't know. You guys are saying there could be an accidental baby boom. What does that even mean? Do you hear yourselves? That's not possible.
No, I'm saying people are just gonna nut everywhere, and there's just gonna be more babies than usual.
Exactly.
Okay, but look, guys, we're talking about a baby boom on the scale of the baby boom of the 60s, okay? We're not talking about accidental nuts. Yes, there would be more babies.
Okay, here's my question. Why do we have to measure it to the scale? I mean, I think arguably baby
because
booms,
that's literally the question.
but I think baby booms is huge. I think it's the biggest boom that's ever happened. Why? So if there is a large, let's just,
If you're going to argue there could be a small boom after, of course, I think it's possible, but I would still disagree because I think there's an economic recession, and I don't think people will have babies during a recession.
That's another pretty strong. It's tough. It's tough. I like Monica's argument a lot because I've met people, I know people that, went through, like abortions, and it's like a huge psychological toll, more than we would think, right? So off of my firsthand experience, I like, for Monica's side, I'm like, yeah, that's a very interesting point. How many people are willing to pull the trigger, right? I want the baby out. Maybe some people, they have, you always hear the story of people getting knocked up and being like, well, you know what, this is my second chance at life to give like a new life, a better life than I had.
a lot of people, yeah, going with what Daria is saying, it kind of gives, like, right now, I think there's a lot of people who are in isolation, like, you're having cabin fever. And I think that, you really yearn for, like, that connection with something. And if you don't have a partner, if you don't have family, or you don't have friends, and, you're, okay, well, I guess you might have a partner because that's how you get a baby. But if you get a baby, it's kind of like, this is something that's, going to give me a meaning to life, like when you're going through this coronavirus thing where everything kind of sucks. It's like, well, you know what, we're going to get through this because I have somebody, like this human, that gives me a purpose in life, kind of what Daria was saying. And I think that's kind of what people might be looking for.
I'd like to tie it.
Just let me make a quick comment. Let me make a quick comment. Just real quick. It's fine, but I want to make a quick comment. Now we're getting into the statistics of whether people might get an abortion or not. Look, we're talking about baby booms, okay? Yeah. I'm not disagreeing that people might accidentally have more babies. Yes, actually, if your point is that people will have more accidental babies than usual, I think that's very possible because people are horny off of their brains right now. But we're talking about a baby boom, okay? Baby booms don't happen because a bunch of people decide not to get abortions. Baby booms are intentional. I don't think there is such a thing as an accidental baby boom. So that's just all I wanted to get at.
I wanted to get that too. I think that because after what Monica said too, what we're talking about, I realized that perhaps Kia's right. Intentionality is part of doing things intentionally. Is in a really twisted, subverted way. Is making things that are giving the most. Giving higher possibilities for accidental things to happen. That's part of intentional, right? That's kind of like a subconscious way of doing something intentionally. Right? And that's where I would now tie like you and Monica's argument together. And for me, that makes sense. It's like, perhaps it's not a huge contributing factor. Maybe people getting knocked up, but maybe a lot of people than average would go out of their way to do that because of what COVID, the isolation, and the complete, now people,
I think that's possible. Yes.
So in that way, I would totally, exactly what Monica was saying, where people they you
I mean,
keep the
have you
baby
guys
out.
heard of people saying that we should start quarantine babies during isolation?
Okay, I don't know what kind of shit you
See,
follow.
so that's dude. I just follow social media, dude. Like, there's a lot of people who
Yeah,
are
people on
bored.
Twitter are wilding.
Okay, well, that's my point. There's a lot of people on Twitter, but like I'm seeing a lot of people who are just bored out of their minds. A lot of couples, a lot of young couples, and they're like, you know what? We have nothing better to do. Why don't we just boink and make a baby and just make a quarantine baby?
Fuck, for the love of God, don't fuck. There's so many idiots. Don't fuck people.
Look,
Let the
I think
people
we-
fuck, Daria.
I think Baptiste was saying, it's just nut everywhere. Apocalyptic scenario where just like a girl slips on a banana peel, falls on the ground, and has like triplets, and
all right. Y'all don't
But
know
yeah, I
how
mean,
to
that's
act.
that's kind of my driving point, though, because I just feel like, yeah, I mean, there's so many things going on right now. People are like, hey, screw it, I'm bored. I have nothing to do. Might as well just make a nut.
Yeah, it's fucked up. It's like whenever you're bored, you can fuck. People, please fuck, but please do not create. Your creations are
Because right
monstrous.
now, I mean, right now we're in a narrative where it's like stay indoors, whatever means possible. If making a baby is gonna keep you indoors, then stay inside, make a baby, make a kid.
You're talking about couples that are quarantined together?
Yeah.
Oh.
Dude, I think that ties in whether you're quarantined together or whether you're going out. I think.
Oh,
you know-
okay. I like this lens. It's like, what is
Oh,
the
okay,
effect
now
on
you agree.
people? No. I don't agree that this will cause a boom. I agreed already that you might have more people decide to have babies. But now I want to see what you guys think. Do you think this will affect quarantined couples who are together in quarantine, or quarantined couples who are separate in quarantine more? And I think that could be an interesting discussion.
I haven't seen you in a while. You want to make a baby?
No, but the point is, we're talking about overall. We're not talking about me and you.
Baby packed.
No, he already
but
has
actually-
a pact with someone else.
Okay.
No, yeah, the marriage pack, not a baby
All right.
pact. That's
All right. Let's rein it in. Let's talk about.
It's like if you fuck me over, Dar, I swear to God.
No. Literally, let's talk about what I just asked. I think it's a good question.
No, that's a great question.
What
I
was
just
your
want to say,
question again, Kia?
All right, Mr. Huh?
Can you write down before we do anything? Can you write down what Baptiste said? I loved it. He
What
was
did
like,
he say?
Let the people fuck. That's a great.
Let
I
it
fucking love that. Just write that down on the notepad. I think it's a great like slogan. I don't know.
All right, got it. Anyway, so Baptiste, the question is, in terms of the couples who are going to make babies after this quarantine, or make quarantine babies, is this going to affect couples who are quarantined together or quarantined separately more?
Definitely quarantine together, because like literally, like Monica said, all they have to do is like eat, sleep, and have sex to pass the time. Like, and like we'll watch Netflix, but then that just turns into her probably touching his, and then here we go again.
All right.
Like that's like like at least 3 times a day couples are having sex. Like there's at least one little droplet that's gonna slide in.
A droplet.
All I'm saying. Yeah.
I mean, Kia, I mean, we spend, when we hang out and we spend time at your apartment, like realistically, if there's, nothing going on during that time of month, how often do we just end up going
you have an IUD.
Okay, but I'm saying
my
not
God,
everybody
guys.
has an IUD. Why are you gonna out me like that? But I'm saying
Because you're talking about it.
Okay, but I'm saying like not everybody has an IUD.
Right. So if you didn't have an IUD, I probably would think twice. So because I have a brain and I don't have babies just because I'm bored.
I mean, I
Anyway, that's.
didn't always have an IUD.
Oh,
Kia,
my
you
God.
usually have 4 kids.
All right. Well, if I don't, listen, son. If you're listening out there, your mother's crazy. Anyway, so I think it's a way in
you're gonna
on
have a baby with me?
No, to weigh in on my own question, I want to say that I think you're right. I think couples who are together are gonna have that baby fever, that cabin fever together, and when you're with someone, it's like, okay, well, let's just go back to basics. Nature wants me to make baby, I make baby, right? But when you're separate, you at least have that physical barrier that like, oh, maybe one of them is thinking I want to have a baby with him now, but they can't. So I think the fever hits when you're actually stuck, not when you're released.
Nah.
So that's
Nah,
what I
because
wanted to say.
because when you're separated, you just get, you miss your partner. So like, you
Yes,
just
but
kinda,
it doesn't make you want to have a baby with your partner. When you're stuck with
Wait, wait, wait.
someone and you
I'm
go,
saying, there's whoopsies, dude.
What
okay,
about
we're going in
when you're
circles.
separated? Let's say when I'm thinking like if you're together, quarantined, I would argue chances I could see it going this way. You have a baby together in quarantine, right? And then you're like, baby's kind of annoying. Like it's a lot of work, you know?
Okay, the baby's not gonna pop out in a month, Daria. What are you talking about?
9 months later, but let's assume the quarantine lasts
Oh
longer.
my god.
Scenario. Let's say the scenario with the resurgence, and then you go back into quarantine.
Okay, by the time you go back into quarantine, the baby's out. Okay, maybe.
Baby's out. Now, and imagine if the couples that were separated stayed separated even after during the resurgence of the quarantine, right? They re-separate or whatever. And now, or they break up. Sorry, or they break up. You don't want to stay with me during the next quarantine? Well, fuck you. This is a good thing to know now. So the interesting thing would be couples that stay together, in separation, like you guys, maybe they have just a thought. Maybe they have more an incentive to have more babies. Because like Monica was saying, when you miss somebody, you come back, maybe you're willing to have more babies than people that are in quarantine together.
I cannot keep up with what the hell you guys are talking about. I'm not lying. Like, I don't know what you guys are on about.
That's because you're just being a man who hates babies.
No, I legitimately look, listen. All right. It's really easy to say that, okay, it's your role in life to pass on your genes. You have kids, fine. But if you have any like common sense, you're going to say maybe now isn't the best time with an impending economic recession. Like,
okay, but do you think guys think with their heads, or do you think they think with
they
their
think
other
with
heads?
their heads, just not the top
think
part.
with their
The
heads.
point is,
They think with their dicks.
no, did you hear what I said? You didn't even hear what I
think with
said.
my cock.
Boys, I said you think with your heads, just not the top head.
That's what I'm saying. Right now, you're just kind of thinking with your head, but the other guys think with their other head.
Okay, well, we'll
They're
see.
not thinking these things
Look,
through.
I'm gonna hard disagree here, but we'll see if you're right.
I think with the mushroom, not with the shaft. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, the shroom head. Okay, this is actually devolving to a degen conversation. Let's wrap it up since you guys want to talk about shafts and mushrooms. Okay, so let's wrap it up. At first, we talked about the effect of COVID-19 on perhaps changing the perspective of our alive, living humans, and I think we agreed that there would be a conservative shift. Did we agree on that?
Yeah.
Some of us,
Possibly.
Okay, so a little disagreement. So some said that there would, some said that it's possible, but they're not convinced. Okay. So our main reason for that was that the propagation of media while you're in quarantine, whether it be social media or traditional media, would be sort of the root cause of that. And an impending economic recession would solidify whatever belief that you developed during that time. Now, we began talking about would there be a baby boom after the pandemic is over. I argued no. I argued that there's an impending economic recession. People don't have babies in times of economic recession. We had our lovely guests argue that there will be accidental babies, there'll be intentional babies, there'll be all kinds of babies, and there could potentially be a boom, but I don't think you guys stressed the boom part of it too much, right? Just that there would be more babies.
Yeah, it'll be like small.
Okay. So that, I guess we answered our questions. This was fun. I liked our four-way conversation. I feel like so far it's been the more the merrier. We haven't been really talking over each other too much. I feel like we didn't get too much of any one person. We didn't get too little of any one person. Even Betsy's, who was working, he still got his pieces in, So
Yeah.
Thank you guys for coming on. Do you guys want to plug any socials or say any last words before you head out?
Not really.
Can you put my TikTok?
Yeah.
I was gonna say put my TikTok as a joke, but I'll do it too.
Did I spell this right? I think I did. Actually, is the Z before the E? I don't know.
No, that's right.
No.
Szechuan sauce.
Smells us.
Okay, and then Baptiste, what's your TikTok?
I actually don't know.
What's
so
your
it's fine.
username? I'm just gonna put Babsy24.
Yeah, I think.
All
we might do
right,
that
Daria,
one,
anything you want to plug?
No, I'm good. Off the grid.
actually.
Okay.
Yeah, it's Baptiste Robineau.
We.
Oh wait, Baptiste, I'll follow you on TikTok.
Yeah, you guys. There we go. The plug worked. Okay.
There you
Well,
go.
thank you to Weirdo and Dreamy for stepping in here. Thank you for anybody who tuned in. I appreciate you. And next week, we're going to be doing a part 2. Actually, a part 3 of our discussion on public versus private school. Baptiste, I'd love to have you on there if you're available.
I would
Jeez.
love to be there.
Fantastic. The more the merrier.
Yes.
So
Great.
let's do it, guys. Make yourselves available for then. And I'm going to be uploading a stream schedule with at least the podcast. I like this once a week thing. It keeps us fresh and it gives a little bit of anticipation. We're all excited to speak, you know? So I like that. Have a great day, guys. We're going to be signing off.